Blah, blah, blah. Today we're going to look at psychosocial, or also sometimes referred to as social emotional development in early childhood. So we've done physical, cognitive. Now we're going to look at psychosocial, and this is once again for our early childhood, which is roughly the ages 3 to 6. In this lecture, I'll be talking about self-definition, self-esteem. We'll look once again at Erik Erikson's stage theories for social emotional development. We'll also look at gender and how our ideas of gender change at this age. Then we'll look at play, positive discipline, and parenting. And I'm also going to do ways that we can encourage kind of pro-social, or ways that you can be socialized and encourage that kind of behavior in children. So emotional development and their sense of self are something that we're really developing over our lifespan, but especially within these ages. I talked earlier about how physical and cognitive development in this age has changed a lot. They've rapidly changed, and they're getting their ability to think more rationally and cognitively. They can't really think abstractly, and they also don't have the rational ability to take on somebody else's perspective. And so that also impacts how they can learn socially and emotionally. In this age, you're also learning more about how you define yourself within your family structure and within peer groups. Infant and toddlers don't really understand that they're twins or youngest or anything like that. But a 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old will kind of have that idea about who you are within your family structure, what kind of friend you are. Those are the types of things that we're working on in this stage. We're also going to be working through gender development, and as it's developing within our culture and within our home. We all have our ideas about the culture that we're brought up in, has ideas about how specific genders express those genders and the behaviors related to those genders. Even within the United States, we have varying degrees of feminine and masculine kind of ideals that we play along with. And then each home as well will have ideas about gender and their differences. So I do want to talk about self-definition and self-esteem within these ages. So self-definition is how a child describes themselves. So typically verbally, but sometimes written as well. You'll have those kind of name poems where you write out, since my name is Jolie, it would be J for joyful, O for outrageous, L for loving, that type of thing. So sometimes they're written, but mostly it's verbally, how when you talk to a child, they describe themselves. In early childhood, I'm 3, my name's John, I love to play soccer, I'm super good at it, I have a mommy, and I have a dog, and a cat, and you know, they're just little chatterboxes, and they'll tell you about their lives, really concrete things that you can feel, you can see, you can hear, that you can understand, which makes sense for our early childhood. 3 and 4 years old, still very concrete things. Then they're more critical as they get to be 6 and 7. So I'm 6, I'm nice to some people, but sometimes I'm really mean to my sister. I like math, but I'm like really dumb in history and in English. You know, I guess they probably wouldn't be Valley girls necessarily, but they can be a little bit more critical, and they can apply some kind of analysis to themselves. It's still a little bit basic, but they can talk about their strengths and vulnerabilities as a human, which is great. Then self-esteem, and that's how we measure our self-worth. In this age, they typically overrate their abilities. So they're the best person on their soccer team, and they learn so good at school and all this type of stuff. And we want to encourage that. We want people to have great self-worth, but it needs to be based on something, and it should be based on a characteristic. So a lot of times self-esteem got a bad rap. We talk about participant medals, and somebody has to win. Not everybody can win at everything. They think that's a really valid point. We do want to encourage our self-worth, but it should be based on a characteristic that we show. So it shouldn't just be, I'm so proud of you, honey, you're so smart. It should be, I'm so proud of you, honey, you worked all week studying those spelling words every day for 15 minutes and you got an A. So I'm valuing the hard work and the characteristic that they put into it, and not just that they're smart, but they worked hard and they were able to achieve something. That's the type of self-worth that we really want to prioritize in children. It reinforces that hard work matters, or diligence matters, or kindness with your friends matters, and helps them try to work on achieving that and not just an innate ability. So not just that you're smart or you're pretty or you're funny, that you work hard, that you try, that you learn from your mistakes, that you are kind to people. Those are the types of things that we really want to reinforce, and we want children to have their personality based around. Emotional regulation as well. So I put in the left-hand side an image about this. So in preschool, we're learning to resist temptation and give themselves instructions to keep themselves focused. And that's really true. If you want to see a better example of this, it's really hard for me to link videos in this type of thing, but it's called the marshmallow experiment. It's very, very funny. It's on YouTube if you just look up marshmallow experiment. So they literally put a bunch of kids in a room and they gave them one marshmallow, and they told them, if you don't eat this for 2 minutes, when I come back, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. So then they leave the classroom and the child is left alone with 1 marshmallow. And they very much understand that if the person comes back and they haven't eaten it, they'll get 2. So they'll have their reward doubled. They literally are like sitting on their hands, clenching their teeth, talking to themselves about why you shouldn't eat it, you're going to get another one. I mean, you can really see that resisting temptation is so, so hard. So we know that they're working through this, and we want to offer them opportunities to kind of work through emotional regulation. Once again, they're 3 years old. I know a lot of adults who are not regulated in their emotions. They can't wait. They can't resist temptation. I mean, a long day, and I really want to come home to, a pint of ice cream and a glass of wine. That's probably not the best way to work through my emotions. It's something that we are learning our whole lifespan. We will probably get to 90 and we'll still be working on regulating our emotions. So we need to understand that our preschoolers are just started on this journey, have a lot of patience and understanding with them. But the best thing to do is identify. So identify, you are really frustrated right now. It is hard to wait for this marshmallow. Understand, waiting for marshmallows is really hard. You want to eat it. It looks delicious, so sugary and yummy and everything. And then regulate your emotions. How can you resist temptation? What if you sit on your own hands? What if you turn away from the marshmallow so you can't even see it? Give them techniques and tips that will help them. And it works the same way in the classroom. You wanted that toy, you took it from Johnny, and then you whacked him over the head. You were really angry. You wanted that toy. It was yours first. I know that you're angry. Next time, if somebody takes your toy, what can you do instead of hitting? You can come see a teacher. You can talk to them. You can tell them you don't like it. You can get another toy. Giving them tips and tricks, because at this age, they really don't see other ways. So helping them identify that they have feelings aren't bad, and that they can work around them and they can come up with solutions is a really good way to do it. So how can we promote self-regulation in early childhood? I have a picture of Cookie Monster here. Elmo is the most beloved, Big Bird as well, but I think that the most important characters on Sesame Street are Cookie Monster and Oscar the Grouch. I think that they are like our id and our super ego. They are like that unrepentant part of ourselves. Give me the cookies, more cookies, nom, 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 nom. So that is something that we all feel that's a part of ourselves. And same with Oscar the Grouch. We all get cranky and grumpy, and some of us show it and some of us try to hide it. I think allowing children to know that we have these emotions and we have these temptations and we have these impulses, it's what you do with them that matters, is a really important thing. And that's why I love Sesame Street for having these characters. So ways that we can promote self-regulation in early childhood. So think preschool age. So think daycares, our lab school, stuff like that. How can we do that? So make-believe play is great. It gives them experiences, helps them pretend to be other things. So especially when you have a new baby brother or sister in your life, having make-believe play, acting out how you feel like babies, that type of stuff is a really good way to get it out and to try to process those emotions and feelings by acting it out. A lot of times with children that might feel anxious about doctors, you'll role play with a doctor, not in the kind of classical yucky way that you are thinking about, but where you actually have doctor things. They can pretend giving shots and things like that and process their fears and anxieties related with doctors and shots. Conversations, of course, we talked about identifying and helping them regulate and giving them tips and techniques to kind of work with these feelings that they have. Modeling, that's the biggest one. If they are seeing people around them, their caregivers and their families who are regulated, who feel emotions, but do feel them in constructive ways. So feel angry and talk to somebody about it. feel upset and cry and then go do something, or are happy and show it, you know, and aren't angry. And the versus kind of the less productive things, get angry and punch a wall, get angry and punch somebody else, get angry and get drunk. Those types of things are, when those are modeled, that shows people how to do that. So we don't want to model those behaviors to the best of our ability, because it's going to show them, if you get angry, you can go and punch something. It's fine. That's how daddy did it, and that's how you're going to do it. And, you know, that's the cycle kind of abuse and poverty, that we want to stop modeling those negative behaviors and start positive modeling some good ones. I can talk about that all day. That's really hard to do. You are probably not going to be able to do that on yourself. So if you had a model growing up who maybe had negative emotions and showed them in negative ways, you're going to need some support. You're going to need support from peers around you, counselors, support systems, social services, in order to kind of change how you were modeled to as children. So don't think that it's something that you can just be like, well, I'm going to stop getting angry and punching walls. That's probably not going to happen. You're going to need support in order to do that type of stuff. And there's no problem with asking for support. Structure. Children need routine, consistency, structure, schedules. They need to vary from that, but we also need to know that something's going to happen next. It gives them a sense of normalcy and consistency, and that things happen predictably, which helps them feel safe in their world and helps them express those emotions. And then, once again, scaffolding. We talked about scaffolding a lot last week, and scaffolding works with cognitive development, tips and tricks, that, like, ways that you want children to learn, but it also can scaffold kind of difficult things. There's this whole kind of parent and teacher and child program called The Incredible Years, where you work on bullying and really kind of very socially important things, but they scaffold the children in kind of groups with puppets, and they can role play and stuff like that, so that they can get to the next kind of step of where they should be. So Erik Erikson, our stage theorist. So we have Piaget, and he is our cognitive stage theorist, and then we have Erik Erikson, and he is our social emotional theorist. So we're now in his third stage. So preschool really aligns really well with early childhood, and that's 3 to 5 years old. At this age, they want to explore their environment, and they want to make good decisions. They want to try to cut with scissors. They want to take the recycling out for you. They want to pick oranges off of the trees. It gives them a sense of ownership and mastery over their environment. So I have this environment, and I can explore it, and I can affect my environment when I make safe choices. If you aren't allowed to make good choices or safe choices, you're either stopped completely from making choices. People always do something for you, or people don't give you a choice. You have any choice in the world, and they can be safe or they can be dangerous. Then you're going to have kind of a sense of guilt or inhibition. So if you were never allowed to have choices, you'll have inhibition, because you just were never allowed to make choices, and that can kind of stop you or inhibit you from wanting to make them in the future. Or if you were allowed to make any kind of choice, you were 3 years old, do whatever you want, go inside, go outside, you're kind of in a neglectful home, socially and emotionally and maybe physically, you're just kind of ignored and allowed what to do, then you might have some kind of guilt because you made some kind of bad decisions because there were no boundaries in your life. So should I jump out of my second story window into the pool? Sure, I'm 4 years old. That sounds awesome. That was probably a bad decision. You got hurt. You fell into the pool. Everybody was shocked. That type of stuff. Then you're going to have some guilt about things that you chose to do, even though it wasn't your fault. You weren't given a safe choice. The choices that we can give kids are, like, at 3 years old, they love to wear some crazy outfits. What shirt do you want to wear today? Giving them choices, like, who cares what a 3-year-old, especially in Southern California where it's 70 degrees all the time, they can wear whatever crazy thing they want to do as long as they have underwear on and shoes probably, maybe not even shoes. But those are the type of decisions that they can make. They shouldn't be making life or death decisions, but they can also make decisions about the food that they have. So you're providing healthy food. You give them a variety of vegetables, fruit, protein on the table, and then they get to make a decision about how much of it they eat. And that's their own decision about it. You've offered the healthy choice. They get to decide if they want to eat it or not. And this is really an important time. So we want to offer safe, great, boundaried choices so that children can start to really take initiative. They can plan, they can carry out things, they can learn about what they can do, and it gives them this real sense of who they are and ownership about themselves. So it's definitely something we want to support. So then gender as well. So there are, let me go back, there are transgendered people, and there are kind of a spectrum of gender. In this class, we are not talking about transgendered people. It is its own class, basically. You know, gender development, sexual orientation, all of that stuff is better served in a 16 or 8-week course where we could go in depth about all of this stuff. That is kind of excluded from this talk on gender. Gender, we're talking about two genders, male and female, gender being different than sex. Sex is typically something that you are born with. It can change, but gender is something that a society kind of performs on you. We have ideas about how boys, girls, men, women act, and we kind of raise you within these gender constructs that we have. So in gender differences, though we do know that there are some kind of gender differences that play across cultures. And that's aggression, and this is not 100%. Some cultures have these, most cultures do, and most have aggression, that girls or women engage in interrelational or social aggression. So that's like kind of the mean girl kind of stuff of teasing, ostracizing, you can't play with her, you can't sit with us. And then boys are really like more overt, like they'll push and they'll shove and stuff like that. I was in Starbucks a couple weeks ago. I needed to get some work done before I went into a social services meeting in somebody's house, and it was like 2, so I sat down and I started my work, and I totally forgot that at 2:30 the middle school around the corner gets out, and it's gonna be like swarming with 10-year-olds, and I was like, oh God. But I got to see this, so I guess that's my point, is I got to see teasing and ostracizing from girls, outright telling them you can't sit with us, some gossiping off to the side, and then boys were doing like the classic, like shoving each other, pushing them into girls that they like, that type of stuff. And we will see that typically around through most cultures. There's no differences in cognition. I do want to talk about with sex differences or gender differences. There's no differences in cognition. It's what you do with the cognitive ability that you have. And then children's play is very different in early and middle childhood as well. So we do have gender roles, and this is really how you're raised, how you're talked to, how you're encouraged to play based on your gender, the culture, and the time that you were born. So how my great-grandmother expressed her gender being born in 1896 is really different than how I was raised in the 1980s in Southern California. It doesn't predict the future. So how you are raised does not predict the future. I was raised in a very similar household to my sister. She's only 5 years younger than me. We were both born in the 1980s. There's not that much difference. She is a scientist. She's like hardcore science, the hard sciences as well, not a soft science like I am, as she likes to point out. I don't actually even understand. It's some kind of environmental wind farm, solar energy. I don't understand. But we were raised in various different households. She's gone into a very male-dominated. She's only like 2 within her department of females, whereas I am in a very stereotypically gendered profession in that we are mostly women. When you get into a preschool, it's mostly women teaching their children in the very young ages. So it's interesting to me how different it was, even though we were raised in very specific households. So how you are taught gender does not mean what's going to happen to you in the future. But I do want to talk about the idea that it's an interest, an attitude, a skill, what you wear, how you talk, that a culture considers appropriate for genders. So Papua New Guinea, Southern California, the northwest coast of Scotland, and Uganda are going to have really different ideas about what different people should like to do, their attitudes that they should have, and the skills that they should have, depending on if they are considered men or women. So we're going to look at gender from a couple different perspectives that have to do with children. So we have a 4-year-old who pretends that he's a girl. So he's in my preschool classroom, and in the dramatic or pretend play area, he puts on some red pumps, and he's got a purse slung over his shoulder, and he's chatting on a pretend iPhone. He tells me that even though he's a boy, he can still be the mama. A theoretical framework that might give us some more information about this. Psychosocial, sexual, that's Freud, our kind of weirdo out there. He's the father of this type of thing. So we've taken some of his ideas and we've used things that are really relevant, and we've kind of pushed aside some stuff that maybe is less relevant, because it was over 100. It was 150 years ago that he was coming up with this stuff. But he would kind of consider this to be a phallic stage. So you've got to develop an attraction to your different sex parent. That's how you know if you're a boy or a girl. Obviously, we know sexual orientation is much different than it was in Freud's day, and we typically will kind of not really use this when we're looking at it, but it's the starting of our ideas about attraction and things like that. Then our behaviorists, those are Skinner, B.F. Skinner, operant conditioning, things like that. Gender identity results from direct and indirect reinforcement for gender roles. So if you're giving only trucks to boys or dolls for girls, either at your school, at your home, maybe out in the wilder community, a child is allowed to play with a lot of different things, but at home, the girls only get dolls and Barbie dolls, and the boys only get trucks, and they are maybe given a consequence if they play with something that's not considered for them. That will reinforce how they are supposed to act. Cognitive, we have this guy named Kohlberg, and he really kind of had some great ideas about gender and then also about ethical development as well in older children, how we kind of develop our ideas of ethics. And he really thought that children typically develop an understanding of gender constancy. So they understand that they're going to stay their gender, and then they'll adjust their behavior. This is, once again, not talking about children who are transgendered, who usually from quite a young age kind of feel that there's some kind of mismatch or that it could change. But in most children typically develop an understanding of gender constancy. So my own twins in kindergarten, one of their friends' older cousins is transgenders. They're going through a transition process right now involving hormones changes and how they look. They were a little concerned at first because they thought as girls that someday they were going to wake up and they were going to be boys. So they hadn't really been able to comprehend the transition process that I am, because I've looked it up and I've read and I'm learning more. This is a process for me and learning more about gender and gender development and things like that. But I have the ability to learn from internet and textbooks and the library and stuff like that, where they really don't. They're just learning how to read, and they heard about this kind of transition from a boy to a girl, and it was really kind of confusing to them. And one of them finally confided in me, am I going to wake up one day and I'm going to be a boy? And I was like, no, you're a girl. You're going to kind of remain a girl unless you decided to make that change. It's not something that just one day you wake up and you have a penis or you have a vagina and you didn't have one before. That's the type of thing that they're kind of learning about. So that's going to remain constant for the most part for most people. So then social learning, Bandura will talk more about, but he kind of had this idea of models, and that's what most of his research in the 70s and 80s was about, was peer models and adult models. So children are observing what we do every day. They're observing the colors that we wear, the skills that we have, the attitudes that we have about ourselves and about other people. And that's how they know how genders are expressed. That's how they know how they should act, is from observing us. So getting back to that 4-year-old, and this has happened to me many times, and I support children exploring and working through genders in preschool classrooms. I don't think that means anything about their sexual orientation or their gendered status, or if they want to change it in the future, it might. But in most cases, it just means that a little boy or a little girl is exploring what gender means to them. They are seeing it in their community, in their family, in their school, how their cousins and their friends do it, and they're exploring what it means to them. So he knows that he's a boy, but he's exploring ideas of being a girl, being a mom, being a dad, being a boy, and he's exploring that in a safe space, which is kind of a pretend area. So by talking on a phone, by slinging a purse around, he's exploring those ideas. And that's typically what I try to reinforce to parents who come in and might be a little bit concerned about this type of behavior, is that it's really typical. It's just a learning process. We learn gender just how we learn everything else, by practice and exploration. And along with that is play. Play is our process of exploration. It's so important. In the last lecture, I talked about play is the work of the child from Maria Montessori, who started Montessori education. And with that, I really think that we need to experience lots of different play. And that's why people get a little bit concerned about screen time, and that 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds are getting more and more screen time hours a day, is that you're not experiencing this type of play. You're not talking with your peers. You're not next to them. You're not with them. You're not working on playing cooperatively. It's hard to play cooperatively. You have to manipulate. You have to talk to. You have to negotiate. You have to trade. You have to share blocks. There's a lot that goes on to. You need to use your language to express yourselves and your needs. That's a really hard thing, is to play collaboratively in the block area with somebody can be really hard. So you have to do it. You have to practice it. You can't just be good at it without ever doing it. Independent play. You also have to be able to play by yourself, to manipulate and understand objects and toys, to pick up a pencil and to write with it so consistently that you go from this grasp into this grasp with your fingers, you know, something like that. So you need to be able to play independently, to work hard at something. Then dramatic and pretend play, which we talked about one slide before with that little boy in the play area with pretending to be a mommy. You're expressing your rich fantasy life. You're taking on a role of another. You're pretending to be a firefighter, a doctor, a police officer, an optometrist, a restaurant worker, all of those types of things. You are taking on a role and you're exploring it, and maybe possibly looking at a vocation that you might want to have as well. But more than that, you're expressing yourself. You're expressing all of the things that you see around you by trying to imitate it in the pretend play area. Formal games with rules. This is more of like our 5- and 6-year-olds. Candyland or Twister, those types of things. So simple things like that where you just kind of go a couple steps. I'm not talking Monopoly, which would be really difficult. Hopscotch, dodgeball, those types of things that have some rules. So there's a winner and there's a loser. How are you a good loser? How are you a good winner? Saying good game, giving somebody a high five, not flipping a game when you don't win. You know, we just started playing Sorry with my 6-year-old, and the first time we played Sorry, it took hours, and then somebody won, and the other twin flipped the board because they were really upset. I got a little bit frustrated, but I tried to kind of like take a deep breath and understand this was our first time playing it. Sorry is kind of a complex game. It takes hours to play. We have to come back and forth. We ate in the middle, all of this type of stuff. So not only did they show a lot of patience and diligence in sticking through the game, they used a lot of different rules. And this was their first time losing at something really that they had spent a lot of time on. So telling them the next time you lose, you should just say, nice job, or something like that, and just walk away. Or just walk away in general, but typically you say nice job and you congratulate the other person on winning. So trying to help them negotiate these types of things. We know that this age, in our early childhood, 3 to 6, they will show aggression. It's instrumental aggression, so it's you took my toy, I'm gonna whack you on the head and I'm gonna take it back. We just know that's just how children are. It's instrumental in order to achieve something. I want my toy back, so I'm gonna whack you in order to get it back. We want to set up their environment so that they aren't hitting each other, and we want to show them ways by having consequences if they do. So if you keep dumping water on somebody in the water table at the preschool, we're going to take you away from the area and you're going to go have to play in another part of the classroom. You are showing me that you can't be successful in the water table, so you're going to have to go read a book or play in the pretend play area. It's called redirection. So if you can't be successful in one area of your house or a classroom, then you're going to go somewhere else and take a breather and do something else, and then maybe you can come back later and be a little bit more successful. The biggest thing is that we're modeling this pro-social behavior. We're doing consequences if they are engaging in aggression. We're understanding that it is still really typically development. That's why it's so important that we limit screen time with children at this age. As they get older, we think that we can be a little bit more lenient, and we can. They can watch it if it's developmentally appropriate, if it's got kind of an educational bent, like Reading Rainbow. Rainbow Bright was awesome as well. I don't know if they have that anymore. That was a big part of my childhood. But Reading Rainbow has an app where they read stories to you and you go on the field trips, just like the movies and the series used to be when I was a child. So there is some advantages to screen time, but if it's getting in the way of children playing by themselves with other people, learning how to trade, how to share, how to negotiate, how to talk to other people, how to play games, then that's going to impact their social and emotional development, in that they haven't had the practice in order to do this. Nobody's perfect the first time they do it. Nobody knows how to share the first time they do it. The more and more practice that you have, the better that will allow you to play better and to be a better friend. This is a terrible image. I don't know why it's so bad, but there are kind of 4, there's more like 5, but I typically just get into 4 types of positive guidance in parenting. We have authoritarian, authoritative, permissive, and kind of uninvolved or neglectful. So really what we're kind of looking for is that this is kind of where you want to be as the screen. You want to be authoritative. You want to have a lot of boundaries. You want to have a lot of love. You want to be really involved, but you don't want to be so harsh. Authoritarian is really rigid. There's a lot of punishment. I'm the boss. You're the kid. You speak when you're spoken to. If you get out of line, I'm going to whack you. There's a lot of boundaries in this, but there's not a lot of like loving attention. Whereas uninvolved is kind of none of it. You're distant, you're uninvited, you're neglectful, you're not involved, you don't care, come, go, hang out, don't hang out, I don't care. You don't want to be that either. And then permissive is kind of the opposite of the authoritarian. You're the boss, I love you, everything you do is awesome, you can do no wrong. No boundaries, no guidance, you want to do what you want, go to bed whenever you want, eat whatever you want, candy bars all day long and stay up till midnight. Awesome! You're totally over-involved, you want to be their best friend, there's no boundaries, there's no limits, it's whatever you want to do. So I can see how all of those are probably not the best way. So authoritative is kind of where we want to be. We want to be flexible. So, you know, some days you have bad days, some days you have good days. You want to help them self-regulate by using the tips and techniques I've talked about. You want to be assertive by providing boundaries and limits to their behavior. Give them safe choices so that they can make good choices. You want to give them guidelines. You want to model great behavior. This is a hard one. This is hard. This is why parenting is so hard. This is why there are all those memes. This is why people complain on Facebook and on social media, is because doing this day in and day out for 21 years, well, 18 years, but most kids hang out or need help through college or need help starting in their career, something like that. Really, for the rest of your life, you are doing this. You are providing what your child needs. So your child is showing you that they need you to be flexible today, or your child is showing you that they need really strong boundaries every day, or that they need a routine every day, or that they're struggling with being kind with their friends and they need you to model being kind, and then they need you to help them regulate so that when you get angry, you can turn it around and you can still be nice to your friends. This is hard to do. Setting boundaries, giving natural consequences, using your words, discussing and negotiating. This is something that all of us are going to struggle with, and that's why parenting is so hard, is that this is really hard to do. So parent education programs through the school district, through First 5, anything like that is going to be really helpful, and it'll give you, if it's hands-on, that's the best thing. Anything where you can work one-on-one with your child and practice these types of things with them, or learn one technique and then take it home and work with your child, is going to help them. So I do a 12-week parent coaching program through the county. So if a child is kind of identified as being on the spectrum, then I kind of come in with the home and I teach them ways to play with their child. So ways that we can set limits, so we can set routines, so that I can give you words to use when you're talking to a 1 and 2-year-old, those types of things, so that you can draw out the social and emotional part of them, so that you're almost providing like the therapy to them, instead of like, it's a very successful program in that I'm working one-on-one with you and your child, and that's why I love it, and I've seen a lot of changes, and that's why I always want to recognize that this is hard. I struggle with it every day. I have 3 children. Sometimes I am not authoritative, and I just have to wake up the next day and I have to try it again, and I have to try to be the best parent that I can. So in conclusion, when adults and peers model pro-social behaviors, so when they are kind to people, when they are polite to people, when they get a coffee and they say thank you and they leave a tip, and then when they set good limits and they offer safe choices, then those behaviors help children understand who they are. And they learn to express themselves appropriately within the community and culture that they are being raised. So us modeling and then being responsive to our children's needs is the way that we can really set them up for success and help them be able to regulate their emotions through their lifespan. All right, so this is the lecture for this week. Like always, you guys will have a video quiz that supports this on Canvas. You'll have a discussion board about this topic, an additional reading, and a chapter as well. Thanks so much, and I will see you in the forums and next week in the lecture.